this is Jen from Winrose Fiber Studio, and today we're going to crochet the linen and lace necklace. For this necklace, you will need a yarn. You really only need one skein of yarn, but I have a couple of choices to show you here. Because this is called linen and lace, you would think that I would automatically go for linen like this one. I think I'm going to use the Noro today just because it's a little bit easier to see on camera. I like using linen for this project because the intention is really for this to be a summer weight necklace, not a scarf, but something you can wear like you would wear a pendant necklace that's decorative and pretty, but also just adds something fun to your summer wardrobe. This Linello by Lang Yarns, this is a really pretty choice. I have a finished piece that I'll show you made up in this later, and this comes in some really pretty colorways. I really like that there's some green in here and some pink. If you look down deep, there's some oranges. So this is a really pretty colorway. So I kind of want to use this but I think I'm gonna go with the Noro today just because I think it'll be a little bit easier for you to see the stitches I'm making. I've got scissors, an optional stitch marker, I've got my 4mm crochet hook, a yarn needle, and then this is a little bit different, but for this project I'm recommending a square of gauze. You could use a piece of paper towel or a folded up tissue. This is technically optional, but it's super helpful. And this is a fun project to show off something pretty, something that's got some color variation, or just something where you really love the feel of it. Okay, so let's crochet. I'm switching over to voiceover because this old studio of mine makes way too many weird noises. We're going to begin by chaining 12. So this necklace is made in two parts. Part 1 is the ribbon. When you chain 12, make sure your chain is not too tight. It should be comfortable to work into. Here you see the front of the chain. And I like to work my first row into the back bumps. So for row 1, we're going to double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. Then you'll skip 1 stitch and work a double crochet increase in the next stitch. You'll do this across. Skip a stitch, double crochet increase. Remember, double crochet increase just means to place 2 double crochets in that stitch. The pattern for the ribbon is a modified V-stitch. Typically when you make a V-stitch, you chain 1 in between the double crochets, but I'm making this a tighter V so there's no chain in between them. They will look like V-stitches starting with row 2 because we'll be working in between the double crochet increases. So here I am on the very last stitch, and I'll work my double crochet increase. This will complete row 1. And then you just chain 3 and turn. We're going to be working the same pattern from row 2 through row 17. The first double crochet will go in between the first 2 double crochets, in between that last V-stitch made or that last double crochet increase made. So you'll be working double crochet increases in each V-stitch across. The V-stitches are simply the double crochet increases from the previous row. You're not working into a stitch, but you're working in between those 2 double crochets. By doing so, it splits those 2 double crochets apart and makes it look more like the letter V. So here we are at the end of row 2, and you can see now that we're working into the double crochet increases, they look like little V's going across. And you'll just be repeating row 2 up until you have 17 rows. Here's a little bit of a closer look. And you can see that each row will have 5 V's. To complete this first ribbon, we'll repeat row 2 until we have 17 rows. You'll double crochet in the first V-stitch and then work a double crochet increase in each V-stitch across. Each row will have 5 V-stitches, and then you'll chain 3 and turn. I just jumped ahead a little bit. I have a few rows done, and I wanted to show you what nice clean lines the ribbons have. And it's also very easy to count your rows. You can just count those V's. Every other row there's a little ridge, so you can count 2, 4, 6, 7. I'm just going to finish up this first ribbon, and then I'll show you what comes next. I'm just finishing up row 17, and now our first ribbon is complete. We're heading into part 2. Part 2 is the tubes. So to create our first tube, we're going to chain 1 and turn. I'm beginning to refer to these as rounds because we'll be working in the round. And we're going to work 9 single crochets across this last row of ribbon. And we'll be working into the V-stitches as before, and we'll also be working into the spaces between the V-stitches. You'll see that I'm marking the very first stitch to make it easy to find. So you can see I'm going into the V's and between the V's. The 9th stitch will be worked into the last V. So now we have 9 single crochets, and we're going to turn the work over and then draw the sides together. So this is how we start working our tube. I'm just going to go ahead and take out my stitch marker. For rounds 2 through 9, we'll simply be crocheting 9 single crochets around. It's a lot easier to keep your place if you mark the first stitch in each round. It's also fine if you just want to count. But once you've marked that first stitch, you're just going to single crochet around. But it can be a little challenging to work in the round with a small tube like this. And that's where our little square of tissue or gauze is going to come in. I'm going to roll up my gauze nice and tight. And now I can just slide it through the beginning of this tube. What's nice about having this piece of gauze, or if you're using tissue or paper towel, is that it gives you something to hold on to. It makes it easier to see the stitches, and even when you're inserting your hook, there's sort of something for it to push up against. It makes it nice and easy to work your way around. Now you'll just continue this for 9 rounds. I'm going to keep crocheting and I'll see you at the end of round 9. Here I am finishing up the last couple single crochets of round 9, and my first tube is complete. But you'll see that as you're working in the round, your work will shift a little bit. The goal is to line up the openings of our ribbons. We're going to add 3 crochets to the end of this tube, and that'll just bring our final stitch just above the opening. It's so satisfying to pull out that little round of gauze and you've got this perfect tube. I honestly think that this is a very fun project to make. I enjoy all crochet, but there's something really fun about making the ribbons in tubes, so I hope that you find it enjoyable as well. And now let me show you how to attach your second ribbon to this tube. So this is how you attach a ribbon to a tube. You're going to chain 3 and turn, and then you're going to work your first double crochet into that last single crochet of round 9. Then you'll skip 1 stitch and you'll work a double crochet increase in the next stitch. So we're going back from working in rounds to rows, and this first row of ribbon is being worked into the last round of the tube, but you'll work it in the same way. You skip a stitch, double crochet increase, skip a stitch, double crochet increase, until you have 5 V-stitches. I've got 1 more V-stitch to go, or double crochet increase. And then I can just chain 3 and turn and work ribbon number 2 the same way I worked ribbon number 1. I'll double crochet in the first V-stitch, and then I'll work a double crochet increase in each V-stitch across. Chain 3, turn. Here we are at the end of the second ribbon, and you'll keep growing your necklace, ribbons and tubes, ribbons and tubes. I have included timestamps to make it easy for you to go back and find the instructions for beginning each ribbon and each tube. But you do sort of need to make a decision at this point. How long do you want your necklace to be? Here's an example of a necklace that has 3 ribbons and 3 tubes, and this is a really pretty length. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to make 7 ribbons and 7 tubes, which is a necklace that you can double up. Now remember, I am working with a slightly heavier yarn, so if this looks like an awfully warm summer necklace, it is a little bit warm. This one is one to break out in the fall, but I also have one to show you in a bamboo that's much lighter weight at the end of this video. When your necklace has reached your desired length, you can see I'm just pulling the working yarn through the last loop and I'm going to go ahead and thread it onto a yarn needle. I have swapped out my sharp needle for this more blunt plastic needle, but a sharp needle would work fine as well. It's time to attach the last tube to the first ribbon. So we're just going to be working once again in the V's and between the V's across for 9 stitches, and we'll also be working through that last round of 9 single crochets on our tube. Before you start sewing, take a moment and make sure there's no twist in your necklace. As we whip stitch the tube to the ribbon, we're going to go through each stitch twice. You can see that when you make a single crochet, there are 2 threads that go into each single crochet, and we're going to be mimicking that as we sew these 2 pieces together. You'll have the same sides of your work facing, and you'll go through that first single crochet and the first V-stitch, and then you'll go through them a second time. You don't want to cinch this end of the tube, so be careful to make sure that your work isn't too tight as you work your way around. And now I've sped up the video a little bit, and you'll see me just working around the tube and through the ribbon twice for each stitch. Now if you wanted to, you could work slip stitches across or even single crochets, and that would be fine if you'd rather just crochet them together. If you work single crochets, there'll be a little ridge, but really that won't be anything that you can see from the outside, and it won't be anything that you feel next to your skin. If you work slip stitches across, be extra careful not to have those stitches be too tight. I think slip stitches can tend to be a little tighter if you're not careful. Otherwise, just join me and we'll sew our last tube to our first ribbon. And before you know it, we're on our last stitch. And our necklace is complete. You can give that end a little tug just to loosen up the stitches. You can see how nice this finishes when you sew the 2 together. The fabric feels nice and smooth. And now the only thing left to do is to weave in this final end. I'm going to do this really quickly so we can get to the fun stuff. I love the effect of the ribbons and the tubes and how it almost looks like someone sliced open a tube to make the ribbon. Here's that bamboo I mentioned before. This feels so light and airy and breathable on your skin. I will definitely link it below for you. I also made this one up with 7 ribbons and 7 tubes so I could double it up with this very lightweight linen top. Here's the necklace we've been working on. And so while I'm calling this a summer necklace, obviously this can also be worn as a scarf in the winter time. You could make this out of a cozy wool and wear it doubled or even tripled up as an infinity scarf. I am a fiber enthusiast and I love the idea that I have a wardrobe full of crocheted items that I can break out whenever I want to, no matter what the weather. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope it gets your creative juices flowing. This is so fun to play around with. You can make the tubes longer and the ribbons shorter. It looks really fun when you create the tubes out of an accent color. Imagine using a little texture with a project like this. So I hope you see this as just a jumping off point and that this is a pattern that you can have a lot of creative fun with. If you did like this video, it would mean so much to me if you could perhaps hit the like button and subscribe. I post videos every Tuesday and I can't wait to share more patterns with you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.